personally, I'm planning on living forever. You know, there's a professor in
That's
Cambridge,
ridiculous.
in Cambridge, England, and he says that theoretically we can extend our lives to hundreds of years.
Yes, Swift wrote about that, you know, in Gulliver's Travels, the Struldbrugs, right? You should read it. You don't want to do that.
Really? You
Yes. No, you don't want to do that. Absolutely not.
You know, all through my lifetime, the age at which people die has been increasing.
Yeah.
So my hope is that when I get to be 500 years old, they'll increase it to 600, and then I'll get to 600, and they'll have increased it to 700.
Isn't that selfish? I mean, what, you know, there are other people that need to have your space, have your roles. There are other people that need to be in the studio now. You have to be dead, so somebody else can sit in your chair.
Gee, that's not very nice of them to wish me to be dead.
But all those little kids running around, you know, they need a chair to sit in.
But imagine what society could be like if we all lived to be 1,000 years old, say. We wouldn't have to have children. We wouldn't have to have the schools. At least we wouldn't have to have the grade schools and the high schools. And we would save so much on taxes. And it would be a totally different society. So much, we could have things so much better.
Well, there's a lot of questions about, you know, what are the parameters of that? What kind of consciousness do you have? Are you physically healthy like you are at 30? You know, who are those people that are 1,000 years old? And aside from it not seemingly to be possible, although certainly there are moves toward extending healthy life. And this book that I wrote called When the Gods Come Home to Roost is about a guy who is 65 years old. I think I wrote it when I was 65 years old, who wants to become a teenager. And he, by a variety of plot devices, does become a 17-year-old. And when I was writing this book, my son-in-law, who is a plastic surgeon, sent me a brochure of the first annual conference of rejuvenology, which was actually happening at a hotel in Alabama, right? And that was, you know, 5 years ago. And I suppose they've had their 5th annual conference. I mean, there are people that are actually looking at the physiological dimensions of the problem of aging and what can be done to reverse those. Why anybody would want to do that, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't. You do. So watch out for rejuvenology. Take a look at the conventions. National Association of Rejuvenology. So just Google rejuvenology. See what's being written. See what's being done. You can follow that. You're certainly not going to live to 1,000, but you might live to 150 and not start feeling bad till you're 120, and then you'll have 30 years to feel bad, and it's not for me.
I wouldn't want to go back to being a teenager, but I'd like to go back to 30, and I think I'd like to just stay at 30 forever. Like you say, the key issue is quality of life.
Well, and what memories you have and what level of consciousness. I mean, if you're 150, do you have 150 years worth of memory? Even if you feel like you're 30?
Yeah. Well, that's not bad. As long as you don't have Alzheimer's, if you remember everything.
Mm. Go for it, Terry. I won't be here to find out.
Now, in 200 years, we'll have to have this conversation again and find out if you agree with me. You've also worked for many years with the Bread and Puppet Theaqter.
Yes.
And 2 of your books are about them. Can you tell us about...
No, just one.
Only one?
For this one, yeah.
Oh, that's the only one. Okay.
Yeah. There actually is a, in Julius, you saw at the end of Julius, there's a cantastoria where there's a flip chart with drawings on it, and the guy is telling this story. That's a Bread and Puppet technique, and I just made a cantastoria. Bread and Puppet does that all the time for little shows. They're paintings on a thing, and then they get flipped over, and there's a narrator that points out the different things and tells the story with the paintings. It's an old European technique called cantastoria. And so there is a cantastoria in Julius Morantz, and that's the only other sort of real Bread and Puppety thing in the books. But this is my Bread and Puppet memoir, the Rehearsing with Gods. Yeah.
The most impressive thing for me about the Bread and Puppet people is that I've seen them around Burlington with these enormous banners. And I've never seen anything like that before, so it's the one thing that sticks in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, people tend to think of puppetry as, little things, hand puppets and marionettes. Peter Schumann, who's the director of the theater, thinks big about everything. I mean, we have small shows. We have cantastories that one person can perform. You get two people out of the audience to hold up the poles, and maybe another person to flip. No, one of them flips the paintings, and one person performs it, that's for sure. But Peter thinks in very big terms, in very big space. So you need large objects. And there may be 200 people in a show. And the way Bread and Puppet works is that when you tour, either you have 200 people during the summer every weekend on the farm in Glover, and people come up to see that. But when you take it around, you take 7 people or 10 people around on tours around the world. And you tell people, on such and such a date, we're going to be in such and such a place, some central plaza. Meet us with 150 people. And we bring stuff for 200 people. And then can pass it out, and then spend the next couple of days training the people that come with us to do the show. And so we can do these big shows all around the world, but not by bringing 200 people.
I was one of those volunteers 2 weeks ago in Burlington, and there was a windy day. I tried to hold that.
No kidding. It's not easy.
Eventually, I guess everybody gave up because...
No, that's not true. In fact, I think 2 or 3 people gave up, mostly because they didn't have adequate gloves.
Yeah, I didn't have the gloves.
Yeah.
And also the wind was blowing it, and I had this big pole. I was a little afraid, it might fall over.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I did the whole thing, and it was hard on my back going up because the wind was blowing this way. So I had to support the pole with my lower back. Coming back, it was easier because the wind was in a different direction. But no, there are great, funny stories about puppeteers fainting and puppeteers collapsing under the weight of things, and I have a lot of funny stories in the rehearsing with gods, but trying to play the cello and the puppets.
So how long have you been working with the
Since 70.
Since 1970?
Yeah. Every year except for the years that I was out in California in seminary.
It's almost 40 years.
Yep. Yeah, this is 35 years of stories, this book. And a lot of people, love Bread and Puppet and all over the world, but a lot of people, even those who love them, find some of the gestures mysterious. And Peter's not into agitprop or, Peter's into very big images. And bigness is mysterious. It's mysterious. Because it's it invades so many and so much space. Yeah.
They have a political orientation too, right?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have marched or worked on George Bush's campaign.
No, of course not. I mean, the theater is a political theater. And the circus, in the summer, we do 2 shows. We do a circus and a pageant. Circus is in the format of a circus. It has a circus band, and it has circus acts, and the acts are mostly political acts, sort of either ridiculing or criticizing stuff that went on in the previous year. The pageant is usually on political themes, but it's way bigger and more difficult to say exactly what's going on. I mean, for instance, instead of a show about, rich people hitting poor people in the circus, it might have 10 groups of 4 people very slowly setting up wash lines in the distance and washing their clothes and hanging them up on the... What's that about? Isn't this clear? And you find out what it's about when you have a set of butchers who have bloody aprons, and they wash the aprons. They wash the blood off their aprons, and then they hang them up. And there's no more blood on them. So, washing the blood off your hands is what the show is about. But it's not. It's mysterious, and it's imagistic. So there are those 2 kind of things. But it starts out of a political core. It starts out of an anti-war and humane orientation. I feel very comfortable with it, and so I've stuck with it, and it's been a really important part of my life.
We have the Mardi Gras parade coming up in February here in Burlington. Are they going to be involved in that?
Don't know.
Pardon?
I'm not sure
No.
what the schedule is, because the puppeteers during the winter are largely on tour. So the question is, are they in town to bring stuff, to organize stuff, to bring things? So for that demonstration, there were 2 puppeteers in town. And I called them up and said, can you come to do the Gaza demonstration? They said yes, and they brought a van full of those signs and some Gazan women and their dead bodies, and so we had that. 2 people brought that. Took up a lot of space.
I was there. They had a lot of material. So